Imagine a puzzle with more than 159 quintillion possible solutions. That's 150 followed by 18 zeros. Now, imagine having to solve this puzzle every single day before dinner. Welcome to Bletchley Park. To the untrained eye, just another idyllic slice of the English countryside. Sheep grazing, tea brewing, and the perpetual drizzle that makes you question your life choices. But beneath this veneer of pastoral serenity lay the epicenter of a cerebral war, a place where some of the sharpest minds gathered to take down the Nazi war machine and its Rubik's Cube on steroids. Not with guns or tanks, but with pencils, paper, and an uncanny ability to drink copious amounts of tea. Enter the Polish trio Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Rudzinski, and Henryk Żygalski. Now, Poland isn't just about pierogis and people who can pronounce szczęście without spraining their tongues. These mathematicians looked at Enigma and said, "Hold my vodka." Without access to an actual Enigma machine or any inside information, just sheer brain power and a side of permutation theory, they built the Bomba, the first machine to crack Enigma's code. For a while, they were the unsung heroes, decrypting messages and probably wondering why everyone else found it so hard. With war looming, the Poles made a bold move. In July 1939, they shared everything. Yes, everything with the British and French. They basically handed over the keys to the Enigma Kingdom in an act of intellectual generosity that shaved years off the Allies' code-breaking efforts and set the stage for what was to come. For a while, these unsung heroes decrypted German messages like they were reading the morning newspaper. But like any good villain in a story, the Nazis didn't sit still and in 1939 upgraded their Enigma, adding more rotors like a gamer unlocking new levels. The Bomba was overwhelmed, much like anyone trying to understand quantum physics after one coffee. This is where Alan Turing steps onto the stage. A man so ahead of his time, he probably had Wi-Fi before the rest of us. Turing picked up where the Poles left off, looked at the new Enigma, and with the casual confidence of someone who invents computer science on a Tuesday, said, "Challenge accepted." Now, let's take a moment to understand what Turing was up against. The Enigma machine was a marvel of German engineering. A typewriter on the outside, a labyrinth of electrical circuits and rotating wheels on the inside. When an operator pressed a key, say A, the signal would pass through several rotors, each one scrambling the letter further before lighting up a different letter on display, perhaps G. Then, the rotors would rotate, changing the encryption pathways for the next letter. This meant that even if you pressed A twice in a row, it would encrypt to different letters each time. But here's the twist. Due to the machine's design, no letter could ever encrypt to itself. So A could become B, C, or any other letter, but never A. This might seem like a trivial detail, but in the high stakes of world cryptanalysis, it was a golden ticket. Turing realized that this little quirk could be exploited, like Heil Hitler, Fette Bereicht, weather report, or keine besonderen Vorkommnisse, nothing to report. He could align these cribs like the intercepted ciphertext. And by systematically eliminating any possibilities where letters mapped to themselves, he could dramatically reduce the astronomical number of potential settings. Using advanced mathematics and a penchant for thinking outside every conceivable box, Turing designed the Bomb, a machine that was capable of testing 17,476 possible rotor positions per setting, rapidly narrowing down Enigma's daily cipher settings from 159 quintillion to something you could solve before the next ice age. It was like finding a needle in a haystack, if the haystack were the size of the universe and the needle kept changing its shape. Fortunately, Gordon Welchman, Turing's colleague, added something called the diagonal board, enhancing the bomb's efficiency. Think of it as a software update that makes your phone run twice as fast. Now, cracking Enigma wasn't just about fancy machines and high-level math. It was about exploiting German mistakes, Not only did the Germans, confident in their unbreakable cipher, repeat phrases while using predictable message headers mentioned earlier, the operators even used their girlfriends' names as keys. It's just like using password 123 as your password and wondering how you got hacked. Then there were the sillies. Predictable key settings like AAA or BBB that lazy operators used. It's as if they were leaving breadcrumbs that the folks at Bletchley were more than happy to follow, a task made much easier by another trick the Poles had up their sleeve. The Zagalski sheets, perforated sheets used to find patterns in Enigma messages. It was laborious work involving razor blades and a lot of patience, but it paid off. Amidst this brainy battalion was Joan Clark. In an era where women were expected to be seen and not heard, preferably in the kitchen, a woman who not only kept up with Turing, but occasionally probably lapped him intellectually while knitting a sweater. Clark was a cryptographic powerhouse. She worked in the shadows, her brilliance often dimmed by the pervasive sexism of the time. Fun fact, she and Turing were briefly engaged, but that rom-com is a separate enigma all by itself. Bletchley Park wasn't some exclusive gentleman's club of tweed jackets and pipe smokes. It was a motley crew of mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, and even crossword puzzle aficionados. If you could solve a crossword in under 12 minutes, congratulations, you are now part of the war effort. At its peak, Bletchley housed over 10,000 people, 2/3 of them women. These were not just secretaries and clerks, they were linguists, mathematicians, and cryptanalysts beating the heart of an operation that churned through thousands of intercepted messages daily, armed with nothing but sharp minds and, presumably, an endless supply of Earl Grey. These codebreakers worked in shifts around the clock, fueled by a sense of duty and probably a fair amount of caffeine. They weren't just racing against time, they were racing against the clock that reset to 0 every midnight. Each decrypted message was a victory, a small chisel strike against the monolith of Nazi communication. But just when you thought it couldn't get more complicated, the German Navy unveiled the Lorentz cipher machine, Enigma's bigger, nastier cousin with a superiority complex. If Enigma was a locked door, Lorentz was a bank vault inside a fortress surrounded by a moat filled with algebraic crocodiles. While Enigma had a mere 3 to 5 rotors, Lorentz boasted a whopping 12 wheels, creating a cipher so complex it made Enigma look like a child's plaything. This wasn't just a curveball, it was a whole new sport. Lorentz was used for the most secret communications between Hitler and his generals, messages that could turn the tide of the war if intercepted and understood. And who do we have to thank for tackling this new beast? Tommy Flowers, an engineer who looked at Lorentz and decided it was time to bring out the big guns, or rather, the world's first programmable digital computer, Colossus. Built with over 1,500 vacuum tubes and probably violating several fire codes, Colossus could process data at unprecedented speeds. It didn't just crack Lorentz, it cracked open the future of computing. To further their efforts, the Allies undertook dangerous missions to seize Enigma machines and codebooks from sinking U-boats. Brave souls boarded enemy vessels, sometimes under heavy fire, to grab anything that wasn't nailed down. It was the ultimate scavenger hunt. And across the pond, the Americans weren't sitting idle. They built their own versions of the bomb, faster and more efficient, because if there's one thing Americans love, it's supersizing. This transatlantic teamwork meant that by 1943, the Allies were reading encrypted German messages like an open book, or at least a book that's been partially translated and is missing a few pages. Now you might wonder, did the Germans even suspect their precious Enigma was cracked? Well, they had their doubts. Occasionally they'd scratch their heads and think, how did the Allies know about that convoy? But they'd usually chalk it up to bad luck or superior enemy radar. They simply couldn't fathom that anyone could muster the brainpower and resources to break Enigma. Talk about underestimating your opponent. Through this symphony of intellect and innovation, Bletchley Park became the backstage crew that made the grand performance of Allied victory possible and accelerated it by at least 2 to 4 years. The information they extracted wasn't just numbers and letters, it was life, death, strategy, and survival. Yet, when the curtains fell, our heroes didn't take a bow. Sworn to secrecy under the official Secrets Act, they returned to civilian life without fanfare or applause. Their monumental contributions were classified, tucked away in vaults of government bureaucracy, and hidden from the world. It was as if Da Vinci had painted the Mona Lisa and then was told to forget about it. In 1974, nearly 30 years later, the veil began to lift with the publication of The Ultra Secret. As for Alan Turing, the man who helped save millions, whose mind was a national treasure but whose personal life became a national disgrace. He faced prosecution in 1952 not for a researched and expanded Fourth Reich, nor for any crime that would be reasonably fathomed, but for gross indecency, because he was gay. A criminal offense at the time. Offered a choice between prison and chemical castration, Turing chose the latter, a decision that led to his untimely death at 41 from cyanide poisoning in what many believe was suicide. His brilliance extinguished not by the complexities of cryptography or the most deadly human conflict in history, but by the prejudices of society. Today, Turing is rightfully celebrated as the father of modern computing and artificial intelligence. His face appears on a 50-pound note, a silent apology etched in currency. The legacy of Bletchley Park isn't just in history books, it's in every electronic device we use today. The smartphones, the laptops, the internet all trace their lineage back to the breakthroughs made by a group of dedicated individuals who, in the face of impossible odds, chose to think harder, dig deeper, and believe that no code was unbreakable.